I think we'll give people just a couple more minutes. I still see people arriving. All right, well, I see 30 people on, so I think we'll go ahead and jump into it. People might still be arriving. And Tanya's recording for us. She just texted me, so that's in the event somebody can't make it and they want to see this anyway, or if you want to review any of it for any reason. We are going to go over some of the queries at the end, something we haven't really done in Budget Kickoff before, so that might be useful. So anyway, everyone, welcome. I'm Christine Moody, the budget manager, and I'll go ahead and have budget staff, central budget staff, introduce themselves to you too. Joe, you want to go first? I see you.
Hi, Joe Celesta. I'm management analyst, and I work with Public Works, Emergency Management, and TS.
Awesome. And I think I saw Jill join. Oh, yep. Maybe. Can you hear me, Jill?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Jill Allen, I'm a management analyst in the Budget and Financial Planning Office.
Awesome. And Tanya Ellis is our newest member. Go ahead, Tanya.
Hello, good afternoon. I am working with County Council, Assessment, Taxation, and HR, and I'll be sending you a bunch of meeting invites shortly, so you'll get tired of seeing my name in your inbox, I'm sure, this budget year.
Awesome. Okay. So our plan for today, I know we have a few new people who haven't been through a Lane County annual budget process before anyway, but so typically we have a budget manual that gives you some of the cost information and points you to various information that we've posted on our Inside Lane page. And so we're just going to go through that manual with you. And then if you have any questions as we're going, we've broken it up by the staff member who kind of put that section of the manual together. So we'll start going through that. And then, like I mentioned, I'll go ahead and go over a couple of the queries. There are some verification queries that we have out there that you run in the budget software when you turn your budget into us. And there's a couple that I know are a little confusing, can be confusing, and especially because we have new people on, I just want to make sure you understand what in the world we're asking for when we have you run those. So, and then, like I said, if you have questions as you're going, go ahead and you could type a comment in. We'll watch for that to pop up, or just start waving your hands wildly. I don't interrupt us. I want to make sure it's interactive as much as we can do when we're virtual. So, so let's see if I think Tanya has the manual, so she can bring it up, and we will post this on Inside Lane here after the meeting. So it'll look very familiar to those of you who have seen it before. So there is some highlighted changes at the beginning, and on our agenda we have Tanya covering the calendar first, but we kind of pull some highlights out for this first section, and so there really aren't, lots of them are just date changes from the prior year. Might be if there's something changing with personnel. One thing I do want to mention to you is that we may well have a new benefit charge for the Oregon State Family Leave Act that they have passed. The plan is for them to start charging for that in January of 2022, and then the benefit starts in January of 2023. So because we'll have half of that in this budget year, we're doing some analysis right now. I'm hoping that we'll be done with that probably tomorrow at the soonest. And it might be something that we have to manually add in. It doesn't look like the software can do it for us, but anyway, we're scrambling a little bit on that one. It came to our attention late last week. But so there's one personnel budget thing that's going to look a little differently potentially. So to warn you on that, and then just letting you know where there might be changes in rates. It is a PERS employer rate change year, so you're definitely going to see your PERS rates go up. The county did start a side account where they came up with some one-time money and started a side account with PERS, and that helps offset our rate a little bit. So that also goes into account. So it would have been worse. I don't know if that makes us feel better or not, but that it takes into account our side account. Let's see, can you go ahead and scroll down? And I'm having a hard time seeing the screen smaller. Yeah, let's go ahead and go to the next page, organizations, SOS forms for general fund. If you're new and have questions on those, please reach out to your CAO budget staff person. Text, we'll talk a little bit about later in the section. I mentioned the PERS rate. This is also a year for us to shift our health insurance rates. And by that, I mean we were able to project that we should be able to keep the rates as a whole flat or fairly stable, but we internally have been looking to make sure that each plan is paying for itself out of the rates that we charge to department budgets. So every 2 years, we take a look at that and just see where claims are and expenses versus the amount that's being collected. And so actually, copay plan is going to slightly decrease, and the prime plan and the high deductible plan will go up. So it really depends on where your employees are. You should have all received the information from the budget office about all the enrollment of where your employees enrolled and be updating that. So you might see an overall increase or decrease, but countywide, it is just a shift between the rates, not an overall increase. Go ahead and go down from this. A lot of this we're going to go into more detail. So like I said, this is some highlights. Anything in the, maybe I'll just point out these on page 2 there at the bottom, you see quite a few of them that are the dark green and then the white text. That is pointing you to a document on Inside Lane. So that's the document name, so you'll be able to find it. So throughout the manual, if you see that there, it's pointing you over to our Inside Lane page to find those documents. Budget review meetings, we'll talk about budget committee. So I think with that is the next page, where to find more information, where our Inside Lane page is, yeah. And if any of you have questions on that, let us know. Okay, budget calendar. So Tanya, you want to take it away?
Sure.
Kind of just walk them through it.
So I can't believe it's already January 19th. It seems like it was just January 1st. It's crazy. But here we are with budget kickoff, and we, the department, so we're here on the 19th. We should be getting you guys the SOS forms that you had last year and your org charts to you by this Friday, so that you can look over those. And we have our budget drop-in sessions kicking off this Friday. We'll have those every Friday from like 9 or 9:15 to 10, depends on the week, I think. And then you guys are going to be working all this next week. And then that takes us into February. So you've got some solid time to start compiling everything. And then February 10th comes the adjusted basis due for general fund only. On the 12th, the direction back to general fund departments for budget department requests if needed. Supplemental 3 sneaks in here on February 18th. So that's something that you have to be aware of. On the 23rd, all department requests due to the budget by 5 o'clock. We know this is tight, so talk to us if you need more time, but we needed to put a hard deadline in there. We added something new this year that we're actually really excited about. On February 26th, we're going to have a strategic measures training. Judy Williams will be offering that training, and I sent out an invite to that today, so most of you should have gotten that today. That puts us into March. Supplemental number 3 is due on the 1st, and we're not really sure what the community requests process will look like this year. The one thing we do know is that it probably will be different from last year, but we're not exactly sure what it will look like this year. We have 2 positions open on our budget committee, and so we're going to do a budget expanded orientation on the 8th for those new committee members. And then on the 10th, we start about 2.5 weeks of the CAO review meetings. So your department with Steve, and then your analyst and Christine will also probably be in all those meetings. And I will be sending you emails this week with the invitation to those meetings. That puts us after spring break, if you have kids like me. The 29th is the CAO revisions are due to budget and final day for PB entry. And then on the 31st, the SOS forms are due back to the budget. So March is pretty tight. And then April, is pretty lean. And then we head into our formal budget committee meetings. Most of those are on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And supplemental 4 is in there also. And then we adopt the budget in June. So that takes us through this year. It'll be June before we know it. So back to you, Christine.
Awesome. Any questions about the calendar? For those of you who have gone through the annual process before, it does follow very similar timelines. I mean, there are some that we have to work around, like with that supplemental 3 kind of being close to department request. We need it to be in the proposed document, so that's why those dates are there. The department request being due when it is, because we have CAO review and we have to analyze. So we do try to look at the number of days that we've given you. Last year was a little bit of an anomaly because we had Martin Luther, just the way the weeks hit. We actually had kickoff before Martin Luther King for the first time since I'd been here, so it might look a little different, but for the most part we tried to keep the same amount of time available for you to be entering your budget. So
hey Christine, this is Laura. I did have 2 questions. How do we log into the budget drop-in sessions?
The drop-in, you'll have a go-to meeting. Yeah, we'll send out a go-to meeting to you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yes. Did you have another question?
Oh, and then the strategic meeting invite, does that go to all of us, or do our budget contacts send that out to their individual groups?
Actually, your department directors told us who to invite. So you should have seen it come, those of you who see director, and it wasn't always budget people attending because it really is in the text. So it's usually going to be the people doing the text, or it looked like division managers. We had a couple departments that might just be sending like their assistant department director. So it varied. So we did reach out to department directors, and they're the ones that gave us back those names of who should be attending.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you for asking that. All right. So overall budget direction, again, for those of you who have done this before, this is going to look very similar. For those of you who have not, you've already heard us use the term adjusted base. And what the adjusted base is providing the same level of service at updated expense numbers. And so that helps us see a true change from year to year. So that's what we start with is our adjusted base budget. And then we make changes related to service. If you're going to add FTE, those things would be in your department request. So the general fund turns in the adjusted base, some of it to verify against the forecast and for us to look at the vacancy variance occurring in the fund. Everyone does prepare an adjusted base, but you're not all turning it into us. So you'll see that queries in the system, there's an adjusted base query, and then there's a department request query, and that's so you can see it go through the process. But basically this here explains that you're going to adjust your revenues to what you think you're going to receive, you adjust all your expenses, and then your adjusted base won't balance in most cases. You're either going to have additional funds that you would put in reserves potentially, or you're going to be short and have to deal with that shortage. So if you have any questions on that, especially those of you being new to it, please let us know, but this does go through some of the guidelines there. We do, there in the guidelines, it says guidelines in number B, talks about the adjusted base, does include 100% of your vacant positions. So here at Lane County, we want to make sure that by the time you turn in department request, you're adjusting your budget to take into account vacancies that you would have. We don't budget for 100% employment. We want to make sure that you're budgeting what's really been occurring in your funds. Some funds are closer to 100%, some of them are not. They have enough vacant positions that they need to adjust their budget down in order to take those into account. And that's so that we don't overinflate our budget, which can result, in a worst case in layoffs, which would be horrible for building a budget that's 100% employment when you know that's not what you're going to spend. So we want to make sure that those are adjusted correctly. And we're showing really what we think our expenses will be. Can you scroll down a little bit? I think I'm zoomed in a little bit too, so I can see it. So the rest of it just explains the entering of the service change packages, budget impact. Go ahead and scroll down further. The personnel, reserve accounts, no changes there. So everything's obviously prepared in our software. There may well be coordination with advisory committees if we have a community requests, but as Tanya mentioned, that process is going to look different this year. So we're still working on that. We'll get it out to everyone in the event you hear of anyone who wants to file a community request. So ad packages. We will this year have out on Inside Lane a general fund ad memo. If departments do want to make a request for general fund, and we want to be cautious and not say, hey, we've got money to put into these requests, but Steve Mukherheisky does want to hear what potentially is out there, not just for operating funds, but maybe for a one-time expense that helps improve operations in some way. So there will be a memo format that you can fill out and submit with your budget if you have those. And then for non-general fund, there's basically a list where you're going to tell us where to find those changes that you've entered in the budget software. We call it a budget impact list. All right, cost data. I think Jill's going to go through this section for us.
All right, hopefully you can hear me. So the cost data section is just a breakdown of it's all going to be relatively the same as last year. The transient room tax, it's going to list the Title III projects, video lottery, the county indirect revenue. These indirect, there's going to be an indirect summary sheet and the indirect, like a breakdown sheet that Joe's in the process, I believe, of preparing that we're going to be posting out on Inside Lane for you to go out and look at. And then can you scroll down, Tanya? I think all of that's pretty static. Grant revenue projections, increased grant revenue. Yeah, this is all. The investment earnings is one thing to note. That is a pretty significant decrease this year. We're at a projected 0.75% rate of return. That's a 1.05 decrease from last year. So that's going to be a pretty big deal. If you can scroll down, Tanya. Thank you. Here's your personnel services, your regular operating salaries, your longevity pay, your medical insurance, extra help, all that's pretty much the same. I'm trying to look out right here towards the bottom, and your employee benefits is that Oregon Family Medical Leave. Don't know, Christine, if you mentioned that just a little bit ago. So that'll be beginning in January of 2022, but they're still working on finalizing what that's all going to look like and what those rates will be. So hopefully we'll have something soon to pass along on that. And then if you keep going down. Risk management charges, that's going to be the risk sheet that we'll have out on Inside Lane, where it will help you look at your workers' comp and also your general liability, and making sure to calculate your general liability. And if you have any issues with that or any questions, I can totally help out my departments or whoever needs help with that. It's pretty straightforward. It's your amount of your operating wages and temporary help times, I believe it's a 0.5, and that will give you the amount that you need to calculate for your general liability amount. If you can go down, the materials and services, the CPI is projected through December 2020 to be 2.1%. So there's that, which is not much of a difference from last year, actually. If you keep going down, Tanya. Utilities. So there's no change currently with eWeb for water, and no change currently for the electricity. However, there are talks of them possibly having a change that will affect 2022. So I am going to be following up with eWeb on any of their rate changes, and we'll let you know as soon as we hear anything that's official from them. The city of Eugene, oh wait, Tanya, can you go up just a bit? Sorry. The city of Eugene does have significant increases. Their stormwater is going up 2.3%, and then their sewer rate is going up 5.5%. So that's pretty significant. The Northwest natural gas rates, there wasn't a huge change there. I think their public purpose charge went from 4.5 to 4.55. That was effective January 1st. So you can go down, Tanya. And then telephone services. So here you can see one of the things I wanted to highlight is on where it says continued, and it says the upgrade fee of $15 per line was added 3 years ago. If you look down in that table, it shows your upgrade fee. And for fiscal year 21, it's going to be $15. For fiscal year 22, it's going to go down $1 to $14, but your base monthly rate is increasing. So those total monthly rates per line are staying the same, but there are some little changes in between the lines there. So I just wanted to point that out. You go down. Fleet has changed their account name to real estate and space rentals. So that's a little bit different. And the way the fleet rates are going to be entered, and I don't know, Christine, you may want to speak on that a little bit more, because I don't attend those meetings, so I'm not totally sure what they're doing different.
Sure, and some of the departments were at that meeting. So that real estate one is actually not fleet. Fleet is right under that, 512531. So the name of that has changed. We'll be changing it here in PeopleSoft. The decision was just made this morning. We're going to split out the replacement from the maintenance. So those departments that attended that fleet meeting last week and vote on how that was going to go forward, the plan is to use 512531, where you're going to choose for those departments that own vehicles. You're going to choose those vehicles. That's going to be just your replacement fee. And then if you scroll down to the top of the next page, we're going to rename an account that has been out there but that hasn't been used, 512532, and that's going to be your fleet equipment maintenance. So that's the one that departments have indicated they want to pay for maintenance as they go along, rather than have it be part of their replacement rates. So Fleet is going to provide us with some estimates for you by department on what to put in there for your budget for this first year. And then for those departments who don't own specific vehicles but rent pool vehicles when they go somewhere, you would put that fleet budget into this line. You know, some of our smaller departments, we might put $500 in fleet costs because we're going to use pool vehicles. You would just put that amount into this equipment maintenance line. Any questions on fleet specifically? I think the departments were all represented at that meeting, so shouldn't be a big surprise other than you've got 2 accounts now, which is going to make it easier for fleet too when they're charging out those replacement rates. Awesome. Okay, back over to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for explaining that. So copies, no changes in cost for the black and white copies, down to direct and indirect charges. Again, all of this information will be posted out on our Inside Lane page along with the TS rates. As you go down, Tanya, keep going. So the PC replacement services, there was no rate change from fiscal year 2021 to planning for 21-22. So all of those rates are staying the same. Your postage rates, it's 55 cents still for a stamp. They did increase 0.5 cent for each additional ounce. So that was a change. And then postage stamps or postcard stamps are now 49 cents. If you go down, this is pretty significant for the food on the consumer price index. It actually had an annual rate of 5.2% over the past year. So you'll definitely want to take that into consideration. In medical care, increasing at 1.3%. And then I think, keep going down. I think that, yeah, I'll stop at capital outlay projects.
All right, what's our next section? If we scroll to the next page. Oh, we've still got more there on cost data, Jill. But transfers, capital, those kinds of things, I don't think there's any changes. Just a note, I think everyone's aware of it, but because we've had it there for over a year, is there are now those, for the transfer codes, the ongoing transfers versus the one-time transfers. So it would just, it's helpful for all of us if you're just careful about which one you're using. So we use those because of checking the structural balance of our funds. If you have ongoing transfers, we're going to count those as revenue coming into the fund, basically. Even though kind of in standard accounting, you wouldn't count a transfer as something that occurs year over year, but we've got places in the county where general fund into H&HS is a great example where that happens every single year. It's going to happen every single year. It's for services like public health. And so we need to be able to count that as revenue in their fund to show that it's balanced. And I need to be able to count it over in the general fund as an ongoing expense too, rather than just a one-time. So and then the page we're showing right here is on reserves and contingencies. So this will look the exact same as last year, but just a reminder that Lane Manual, our county policies, we have policies for what the general fund has to have, and there is a policy for road fund. The other ones say that they will be set through the budget process based on the need. So we have funds that need more than 20%, you know, if they hit the ground running on July 1st. Parks is a good example where their services are much more robust in the summer than in the winter, so they've got to make sure that they have enough in reserves before they start collecting revenue as they go through the year. So we may well ask you questions about what your reserves levels are and why. So that's why we're asking you instead of the other way around, is because some of those funds don't have a set percentage, but really we're going to look for what's needed for your service levels. All right, go ahead and scroll down. And there are different reserve accounts. So if you have any questions on those, let us know. All right, Jill, anything you want to highlight on the, this is the budget software data entry instructions, and these are going to be more specific than you find in our PB manual. They're going to be specific to the budget year annual entry. So go ahead, Jill.
For the budget software data entry instructions, on here for the non-general fund services, so you'll be using the BY base adjustment form. All of these forms are pretty static to exactly the same as last year. I did make a few just kind of cleanup changes, but I highly doubt that anybody will even notice them. It was more just organizing and trying to make things be a little bit more cohesive. For general fund, you'll use Form 10. It's the same exact, nothing's been changed for this year. It's the same thing that you used last year. Again, no change to service or FTE. You can use your budget request 14, which is your budget year balance fund. If you go down, Tanya, I'm going to be looking at and can send out an email to everyone. I do have it on my to-do list to help make the, we talked earlier about the general liability and being able to really make that stand out so that everybody can go run a query and look and pull that number. The past couple of years, I know that there's been some struggle with that a little bit and maybe some confusion. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to provide a little better direction and make that a little easier for departments to pick up. Updating position and employee information. Oh yeah. So the budget office, of course, you all know this, is responsible for updating the position record, where you as the department budget contact person is responsible for updating your employee record and making sure that those two things match is what I believe everybody just finished up doing. So going through and looking at your retirement plans, your medical, your dental, disability, your retiree medical. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Tanya. Your PERS bond, all of those, making sure that all of your employee records are up to date and accurate is super important, because that's going to affect your adjusted base, especially when you're running all of your queries and looking at those amounts. So you can go down, Tanya. SBF projections, I think, I don't know, Christine, if you want Joe to talk a little bit about those or not, but I know we're going to be setting those up, I believe, to be running twice a day like we have in the past historically, but I'm not, if there's any more information you want to add to that.
Just that the initial base will be out there when you go in tomorrow. It'll run tonight. And then, yes, they'll start running, twice a day. So those are just the names here that you have for those very first ones. For those individuals that are new, it might be good to point out that we run them we will have the date and the time in the name of the projection. So you'll see them start appearing. So Joe will have different, obviously different dates and times as we're going on. So there'll be a big long list by the time we're done.
Yeah, we're basically running them at 1 a.m. and at noon every day.
And Joe gets up at 1 a.m. every morning to run those for you guys.
That's right. That's right.
All right. So positions that are budgeted across more than one org or fund, you can run your position detail report to look at those positions. In Info Advantage, also going out and running, I believe it is the 003 report. That will also give you all that information to look at your FTE, make sure that everything looks as it should. If you have any questions or any issues, please let me know, or let your budget contact person know. Sorry. Deals cruise down. We kind of went over the annual merit date in PB and what that looks like and how that is set up and works. If you could go down. Extra help and unclassified temporary positions. The only thing I would mention here again is just that the PERS retiree, the cost for those positions is quite different than just a regular extra help or unclassified temporary position. So just keeping that in mind. That change, I think, came into effect last year. Supplemental or premium pays, we touched on that in the training last week about what those look like with TM sales and different things that go into that. Overtime, comp time. So overtime is always one that we really take a look at, and always like to know what's causing the overtime and how that's going to be different next year, and what, you know, really what those costs are really going to look like actually. So the reminder down there just of the overtime budget related to special events. So last year, obviously, there was a lot happening and a lot going on. But that information that happened for those special events shouldn't be calculated and taken into consideration when you're building your 21-22. So if there's any questions on what you should or could do there, definitely reach out to the budget office and we can help walk through that with you. So if you can kind of go down a little bit, I think all of this is pretty, I mean, I know there's new individuals here, but this is all kind of, again, going over what we talked about last week a little bit. And so like right here, for example, are the position, the status codes in PB. We talked about, you know, the supplemental adds, deletes, department request, when the budget committee adds or deletes. So that's kind of a layout of what that looks like and what those status codes are and what they mean. If you go down, this all talks more about those status codes in detail. So if you could keep going down. Okay, so updating the non-personnel services base budget. So right here, using your prior year actuals and your current year projected and forecasted increases, you should be able to take all that information and build, you know, an accurate budget based off of those amounts. So like, for example, when we talk about like the 2.1 CPI, those are all of those cost data that you're going to take into consideration when you're sitting down and looking at each one of your pieces to build your budget. You can go down. I think that's all.
So this section, sorry, Jill, this section is actually also telling them the accounts that did not roll forward.
Right.
So
okay.
This goes back up to the very beginning of the data entry instructions, where we tell you certain funds have rolled forward their current year budget. That was H&HS and Public Works specifically. The rest of you will see zeros in your non-personnel accounts, and so you'll start from scratch. You can of course see what your current year modified budget is, but so this is telling you what didn't roll forward, and in some cases why. Things like non-discretionary, it's because it's one time, or fund balance. So accounts that we want to make sure you look at, even in those funds that had us roll it forward, you're going to see zeros in some of your accounts. So this is what that list is for. Yeah, are the ones that did not bring anything forward.
All right, so base budget forms. So there's the two different types of base budget forms. There's the number 12 forms and number 13 forms. The 12s are your department level forms. Your 13A and 13B are division is 13A and 13B is program. They're preloaded, so they'll have the current year modified time period. If you have any questions of what form you should use, or how do you know which one you should select for your department, division, or program, reach out to your budget contact and we can kind of help guide you through that. If you want to cruise down there. Sorry, it's really hard to read on this screen. I apologize. I'm trying. It's really tiny. The transfer budget form. So that's going to stay at form number 22, I believe. It's a department transfer form. So it's going to transfer dollars in between departments. Anything that's changing funds, of course, needs to be in a supplemental. And must balance. So that's the other thing to keep in mind. Oh, it says all of that right there. I apologize. Sorry, I'm missing a lot of that because it got really small for some reason. Budget or service FTE changes. Oh, okay. So yeah, those are going to be Form 14 and Form 15A and B are going to be your service changes. So any type of service change at your division and department levels will be on these Forms 15A and B. Sorry, I'm trying to see it. Can you scroll down just a little bit, Tanya? It must look different on my screen than yours. I apologize. Okay. Oh, thank you. That's better. If you can scroll down a little bit. Technology, it's always fun. I'm sitting in my car, so I'm doing the best I can here. I believe balance each fund. So departments may enter as many forms are required for adjustments. Just making sure that your funds are balanced is super important. So there's a query out there, the fund balance adjusted base versus current year, which will show your revenue and expenses along with your net fund. So that's really important to make sure that your fund is balanced. And I think that's the end of me. Yep.
Maybe can I make one comment on something that for positions, and I think it was at the top of one of the pages, but you know, we've gone back to having one person, Tanya, is taking control of our position. She's going to become our position guru, and so she controls that position inbox where you're sending, you know, you have a classification, a reclass that happens, or if you do end up adding or deleting positions, you're going to send those changes to that inbox. But for those departments who have those positions such as extra help or overtime or comp time where you have dollar amounts in them, you can still send those to your specific budget contacts. So Public Works, you're still going to be able to send all of those to Joe. Just make a, you know, he can go back and forth with you on what he might need from you, but usually it's as simple as a position number and what you need your extra help amount to be, and he can make those changes. So that was, we thought that would make it go faster and be a little easier on Tanya for those departments that have a bunch of those tweaks to the ones that have salary amounts on those positions. So let us know if you have any questions on that. Awesome. And I think Joe is going to talk about service option sheets. And these are specific to general fund, just in case that doesn't say that. I'm not seeing here at the top, just for our newer people. So go ahead, Joe.
Actually, I wanted to start off by talking about the budget analysis memo. Just a quick comment about that. That's the memo that you will be preparing to be included with your materials for your CAO review meetings. And there will be a template that will be put out on the budget on Inside Lane page. It's just not out there yet, but be looking out for a template there. Okay, I wanted to get through that because service option sheets are a little bit more involved. Basically, as you all know, service option sheets are basically a description of services that are provided with general funds in particular. Basically what you are going to be seeing coming out this next Friday, I believe, along with org charts that we'll want you to help us and modify if there is changes needed. But what I'm going to do is be sending out to you a copy of the SOS forms that were used at adoption last year. And what we'll do is we'll take out the dollar amounts, obviously, because you'll be wanting to populate that information with the new values. But at least you will have the text and the mandates and the that information at your hands. We're going to be obviously wiping out the dollar amounts, and if there's leverage amounts that you have you put in on the SOS forms, we are also taking those out. So we'll basically be giving you a template, hopefully, to work with. Now, of course, it's on the SOS forms. Previous versions may have additions and deletions of service level that you've experienced last year. That's going to be on the form that I send you, and that might not be applicable. So just so you know, there is an area on the inside lane page on the budget page that is associated with just SOS. It has a really nice instruction sheet on how to fill out your SOS forms, but it also has blank forms if you just have a new service that you are providing with general funds, or if you have an existing service but you are adding or deleting service level in the upcoming year. A couple of things that I wanted to just make sure that you are aware of is, as was described to you before, when you're entering in your budgets on for general fund, we ask that you use Form 10. And in the instructions under the I believe it is, yes, under the budget direction, you'll see that we'll just ask you when you're making those forms to include the SOS name that is kind of associated with that budget sheet, so that we can compare the forms that you are entering for your general fund request to those SOS forms. And
maybe, Joe, can I just reiterate that? And the reason we're bringing that up is we've seen that slip in the last year or two. I know it might seem like it makes the most sense to go in and name your forms by your divisions, but we really do need to compare them to those SOS forms. So, and sometimes a division is a SOS form for some of our smaller departments. So hopefully it's the same name, or if you need to change a SOS name, let us know that. But we do ask that those Form 10s match the SOS name so that we can compare them. And just in a few places. I'm not saying that it was all over. Lots of you have been doing it the same way for a lot of years, I know. But for those that are newer and don't realize what the heck we're talking about, it's just that name on the form.
Okay, I think I got it, other than just dates that, like I said, those blank SOS forms, the ones that with the numbers removed, will be sent out to you this Friday, and the department request SOS forms will be due on March 3rd, while the proposed SOS form revisions, the ones that come out of our meetings with Steve, those will be due on March 31st. And that's what I got.
Yeah, and we will update them to propose. So if you end up with a department request budget that this carries into propose, you won't have to turn in anything else on March 31st. It's just going to be if there's a change to your general fund budget. So just so you know, it's not a date that everyone will be redoing all of those forms by any means. So here's the proposed budget text instructions. So we will have a template out on Inside Lane that will have the sections. It's going to look very similar to prior years about talking about your accomplishments, your purposes. It will include division text, which we've done maybe for a year or two. I'm forgetting how long it's been since we brought that back. The one thing on here that's highlighted as new references back to that training that Tanya mentioned about the strategic metrics and measures. So the last few years we have had departments submit 2 or 3 of the strategic metric measures in their adopted budget text, But any of you who paid attention to budget committee last year heard that there is a lot of interest around those measurements and metrics. And so to enable the budget committee to maybe have more conversation with departments and hear about it, we're going to ask that those be in the proposed budget. And so there will be that special training on February 26th. So this is just kind of a reminder to everyone that it is going to be part of the proposed text. It will still, and everyone will hear this again at the training, it'll still be, you know, the 2 to 3 measures that are required. But we certainly are not going to turn departments down if they have more than that. If you do have something for every division, that would be awesome. You know, we'll accept and encourage additional ones, I guess is the language that Steve Mokrahysky used to me. So let us know if you have any questions on those. And hopefully, you know, most of these are things that you're already tracking, so that this isn't a, oh my gosh, we've got to come up with metrics and measures. But of course, Judy will be able to help people develop new ones if you're needing to do that too. So that's it on the text. Here was the analysis memo, but Joe already talked about that. The schedule that Tanya has had so much fun with, doing the little puzzle pieces of Steve's schedule and department director's schedules. But take it away, Tanya.
Sure, you guys, thank you. I have to say thank you to you guys, because you've done a really good job of just kind of complying with the schedule that I put out there. This could be a really big mess, but I will be sending you guys out the requests for these meetings this week. I've heard back from, I think, everybody but just one department, so everything's pretty much set in stone. This is what the county administrator meetings will look like. Kind of has an overview. Your budget contact. We'll talk with Steve. He likes to have a little briefing session before he meets with you to kind of get the highlights, so that you guys both go in prepared for the meeting and really come out with the best information possible. And then you'll go into the meeting with your analyst, with Steve. Obviously, these will be virtual this year. And this is the schedule for that. Is there any questions on it?
Looks like Rebecca might have caught a 120-minute or 90-minute on one of them, but we'll take a look.
By my math, 3:30 to 5 is 90 minutes, not 120.
Yes, it is.
So.
All right. There's our one error in the manual.
Yep.
Good job. All right, we'll take a look at that. But we did reach out to directors, so thank you. I think you were all coordinating with Tanya, but you know, tried to make sure it's on everyone's calendars, and so hopefully we don't have things crazy. As those of us that were here last year, remember halfway through, guess what happened? COVID-19, and so some of them were in person and some of them were virtual. So hoping for a smooth CAO review this year. Let's see, what's next? Budget committee. So at this point, we just have the dates for you. So that's, you know, out on your calendar also. We will start that first Tuesday, May 4th. And so that will be the night that the budget committee hears Steve Mokrahysky's budget message to them. And typically we'll do an overview of the entire budget, giving the budget committee some high level information about changes that we're seeing in it. And I'll give them an updated general fund forecast. And then they will go into what we call the work sessions. And that's where all of the departments will give their presentations. We've also, the last few years, had an extra work session where we talk about any bigger initiatives that might be happening in the budget and enable the committee to maybe have a little more discussion on that day. So this will look very similar to prior years. We don't ever meet anymore on election night. We found that was a distraction, so it's best if we don't meet on that evening. So there is a break, you know, a week-long break between our last work session and then the night that the budget committee will deliberate. So right now that will be scheduled for Thursday, May 20th. And we will have a template for you again, you know, just makes the presentations go a little smoother, but we'll get that out to you soon. Here is the budget staff department assignments. So I think everyone knows who they're working with in the central budget office. You can always reach out to any of us if you can't reach your primary contacts, but of course they're going to be most familiar with your budget. So throughout the manual where we're talking about, contact your budget staff person, that's who we're referring to, but we can all help you with various things. So any questions on the manual? And for those of you that are new, I know you might have been hoping that we'd give you a step-by-step manual. That's not really what this is. Obviously, it's just giving you the updated cost data as we have it. And then some of the information, you're the expert on the other pieces of your budget, and you're going to know what to put in for revenues and expenses and what's happening there. But if you have any questions as you're doing that, then yeah, reach out to any of us. So I think that's all we have on the manual. Let me see if we have any. Can we elaborate on vacancy variance entries will be entered and if we will need to adjust general liability? So vacancy variance, yeah, is entered between adjusted base and department request. So that's, I'll give the example of the general fund maybe because that's the one I'm most involved in kind of looking at and analyzing. We look back and see, okay, what has the vacancy been running? And then we look to see if the forecast has held, on personnel increases and other things. And then we determine what the vacancy rate will be for the next year. So every fund is doing that on their own. And then, yes, because salaries are changing, and that's what general liability is based on, then there is an adjustment to general liability at the time the vacancy variance goes in. And we will, we don't have another process in the software. For those of you who have seen it before, we just apply, we can apply different percentages for different funds. So you let us know what your fund is going to be, and we can apply that percentage. And you can move it around within your department IDs if you need to. Like the general fund is a good example where it's going to apply to every department ID in the fund. But then if you want to move it to one section where all your vacancies are really occurring, you can do that. So we have forms for that. But yeah, unfortunately, that darn general liability, it's based on salaries. And so when they change, it has to be adjusted too. We're going to talk about that query next. So as we look at these verification queries, I didn't list it, but it's one of them that I sent to Tanya. So hopefully maybe looking at this will help. So like I mentioned, the bottom, you'll have a department request checklist that you're going to look at. And really some of it's just reminders that kind of look back to the budget manual and did you do this? Did you do this? Did you take into account this? And a lot of them you're just going to say, yes, 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 yes. I did it perfect. But then at the very bottom of the checklist, there are some query names for queries that we've created out there that should help you verify and catch any errors before you turn it in. And general liability is one of them that can be a pain. And technology services, you're our example because you've got some data out there because they've created their budget early. So here I just went out and ran the general liability query. I exported it into Excel, but this is on technology services. You can see it's for all of their funds together. They have personnel in one fund. But I just wanted to show you, and especially those new people, how to read it. And then of course, we're available to talk it through with you. So if you look at column B for department request or adjusted base, sorry, the T department adjust stands for total department adjusted base. So the query is bringing in for you your regular operating wages and your extra help. In the instructions, that's what, if you look back at that part of the manual, it tells you add these two. I think it might be more than two, but TS only has two of them that apply. Add these two together, and then you're going to multiply the percentage by it to come up with your amount. So you can see that this query, behind the scenes, it has that same percentage in it, 0.5%. So it's doing the percentage calculation for you. And then the next line, general liability, is showing you what actually has been entered into your account. And that's by you. That's you going out into budget forms and entering general liability into that 512345 account. And this shows that, you've entered 36,000, if I'm reading it right, 554. So you've got a difference between the percentage and then what you've actually entered into your account. And this is where that risk worksheet comes into play. So the risk worksheet, which I didn't send to Tanya, but it'll be out on Inside Lane. I didn't send to her to bring it up here, but you're going to have just a number out there if you have an expense for general liability claims that have happened in the past. So general liability claims are billed out to departments. There's a 5-year average. Basically, you're paying back the risk fund. The risk fund has paid for general liability claims. And so you're paying the fund back for those claims. So how I would read this on column B is that I would expect when I go look at the risk worksheet that it'll show that TS has $6,400 in fixed general liability payments. So it looks like they're adding some in department request. Just to talk about the next column and how the number is different at 7,300, they most likely have not adjusted their department requests, or they haven't adjusted their general liability yet. Because I would expect when I run this at the end of the process that bottom fixed cost general liability, it has to be the same all the way across. Otherwise, one of them hasn't been adjusted yet. So this is what we run at the end, and we run it when we're verifying your budget. So if we go out here and we see 6,400 and we pull up the risk sheet and it says 7,000, we know that there's something wrong that's been entered into 512345. It wasn't adjusted in some way. So I know sometimes people look at this and say, wait a minute, it looks like, this is telling me that my fixed amount should be 6,400. No, it's not that smart, is what I tell people. It's just doing a difference calculation for you. It's that risk worksheet that tells you. And let's see, we've got, Joe was replying to all of us, but needing to do just patience, making sure there wasn't a comment there. Are there questions on this general liability? I know we hate it. There's 2 different kinds of numbers in there. One of them's fixed and one of them is a percentage. No, hopefully that helps make sense. And once you go out there and look at it, so it really is just comparing the percentage to what you've entered, and the difference should be what's on that risk worksheet. So hopefully that helps. Okay. I don't see any hands waving or any comments popping up. So let's see, we printed out a couple others. The others that we see people struggle with are the FTE. And then I had also sent Tanya the structural balance one just to touch on it because it's a newer one. So this is, let's see, actually, Tanya, could you bring up the adjusted base one first? Sorry, I sent you 2 different FTE ones just to start at the beginning so that you'll understand what it is. Some of these, we just ask that when you run those queries, when you're doing your department request and turning it in, that you do take the time to look at them and make sure that they're making, sense to you as you go through the time periods. You don't have to send them to us. We're just asking you if you've run them. So years ago, when we were all living in the land of paper, you would all print them out, send them to us, and we don't need that though, unless you have a question or an issue with one of them. Okay, here's the adjusted base. So this is the first time you would run an FTE query. I'm going to make it a lot bigger. Okay, so what we will look for on the adjusted base, one is, this is still department request, sorry. Did I send you the same one twice? Hopefully not. I emailed them to you. Adjusted, the second one down. I probably named them differently, sorry. Okay, there we go. This is showing TS again. It's showing by division. Although we're going to try and help catch your errors for you if these were off by division, but really budget law is going to look like fund at your amounts and FTE. So this one right now, shows that their current revised budget, it starts with 2021, current revised budget is 69 FTE, and their total department adjusted base, clear off to the right in column F, is also 69. That's what we either want to see that they are the same number, or we need to be able to see the explanation of why they would be different. And the explanation could be that there's a status 16 position, which is something's going to be added in a supplemental that still hasn't happened, or something's going to be deleted. There's going to be a status 17 position. And so then if we saw a 1, say there was a 1 in status 17, we would expect the total adjusted base budget to be 68 instead of 69. So most departments are probably going to see these numbers just be the same between current and adjusted base. What we're trying to make sure is that a position hasn't just vanished at the end of the year. So we're trying to make sure that you're starting out with the same FTE that you're ending the year with, or we have to explain why you're not a 16 or a 17. Any questions on this one? It's pretty straightforward. And once you enter supplemental 3, that's that column C. So we would also be able to verify that if we see a status 16, we would expect to see in supplemental 3 a 1 if there was 1 in the status 16, or a -1 if there was a status 17. So we run this also to verify that we're not losing any positions that shouldn't be lost, if that makes sense. Okay, now department request is the next one. So department request, this shows between adjusted base. So it starts with adjusted base. You've already verified that running the first query. And so this will start with adjusted base. Oh, it's showing us decimal points. So they actually have 69.25. We'll make sure the other one is showing decimal points too, because we do need to go out the 2 decimal points. And then if there were FTE changes, you'll enter what we call a department service change package. That's one of the forms that Joe mentioned. It's a Form 15. It's been that number for years. So after you do this for a few years, you'll get used to Form 15s are changing FTE or changing services. So the only way to get that FTE into the budget is to put it in a form. If it's an ad, put it into one of those service change forms. And so we would see it appear in column C. So if you were adding 1 FTE, we would see a 1, and then the department request should be 70.25 if there was a 1 in that department request. And then the 2 columns off to the right, F and G, that again is just looking to see if we have any adds, which are status 20s, or any deletes happening. And that's going to help us verify that the position record has been updated correctly. That F and G, those will come from projections that we run. You know, those aren't really in your budget. It's column C that's going to feed into your budget. So we would run projections on just the status 20s, and we would have a number there, and then we can verify that, yes, indeed, column C, it ties out to F and G, so that we can really do the math across B, C, and D in order to get to where we need to. And then I didn't print them out for you to see here today, but there will be also 2 more of these, one for proposed and one for, actually maybe there's 3 more, sorry, proposed, approved, and adopted. And you won't always be running those, but we will when we have changes to make sure that, yep, we got all the budget forms entered. If there were changes by Steve or the budget committee, or at the end of the process, if you submit ones, this is how we try and reconcile FTE as much as we can before we're adopted, so then we don't struggle with trying to find pieces of FTE that might have changed. So hopefully that helps a little bit, and we'll walk you through it if you need to when we get to them. And then if you run it and you just can't make sense of it when you run your department request, please just go ahead and reach out to us, and we can try and figure out what's going on. You know, because sometimes it just means, oh, a position wasn't updated, or maybe the form, we didn't get the FTE quite right, or something's throwing it off, so you can't do the math across it. Okay, And then I think structural balance was the other one. This is a newer query that we started last year. So I didn't change it at all. And this one, you know, TS is in the process of developing their budget. So this isn't their final budget by any means, but I'll show you still how to read it. And this takes a little tweaking sometimes afterwards. So you start with the query. It's going to pull in for you total revenue. One thing I'll point out is it doesn't show any ongoing transfers, but if you did have some, it would show up as I think it's under that total revenue number, because like I mentioned, for those ongoing transfers, we're going to count them as revenue as part of the balance. So reading this one right now, I can see that their total in the department request, which is column B, I see total revenue, operating revenue, 36 to 18,169, if I'm reading it right. And then can I just scroll down just a little bit, Tanya? And then it's going to show those expenses that are operating. So personnel, material, and services are at first in this query assumed to be operating, and then it's going to show you a total expenditures. So the piece that has to be tweaked, like I mentioned, is if you know that you have things in material and services in particular that are only one time, then you would want to edit this and, you know, make a line that shows them coming out. Oh, is this sorry, I'm looking at comments at the first time. This is not us, it's H&HS. Oh, is it? Okay. I meant to run TS, but you know what? H&HS must have been the last one that I ran. So, all right. You're saying I don't have $36 million to spend. Is that what you're saying? This is not us, or something's gone very right? No, just kidding. So total operating revenue. So this would show that their total operating expenses is $31.4 million. They obviously haven't entered all of their budget. I zeroed out a bunch of lines when I carried forward the budget, but this would show, yeah, they're structurally balanced. They're bringing in more ongoing revenue than they're spending. The places where if that operating expenditure number is larger than your operating revenue, the first assumption would be, whoops, we're not structurally balanced, what's going on? But then it would be, wait a minute, do I have things in material and services that are one time? I can take those out, which will adjust my total expenditure number. So you're really showing either, in some cases, they might not be structurally balanced. We do have a few funds that are no longer structurally balanced because of COVID-19 impacts. But hopefully the majority of our funds are still structurally balanced. So we're just asking you to show that here. I guess I should also mention that if you do have things up in your revenue lines that are also one time, you would also need to take those out of your revenue in order to really get to, as far as you know, what is your total operating ongoing revenue as it relates to your total operating ongoing expenses. Any questions on this one? And we will ask for this on all of our funds. I mean, I know there's a lot of talk about the larger funds when you're hearing us talk to budget committee, but the board does have a policy that we will strive to have all of our operating funds be structurally balanced. And if they're not, then we just need to explain why they're not. So we just might need to ask you other questions. Awesome. Okay, I think, where's our agenda? Did we reach the end? I think so. Any questions about anything? Everyone's so excited for budget kickoff. These meetings virtually are so hard. Not that they're fun in person. I know you don't love budget kickoff anyway, maybe some of you more than others, but I like to tell the story that when I first started up, you know, doing budget for the county, and I started in a department, the Department of Management Services way back then, that doesn't exist anymore. But I remember thinking, budget kickoff, that sounds fun. That sounds like a party. Are we gonna have pizza and chocolate? No. Maybe if we were in person next year, I'll promise a treat. How's that? We will well deserve it by then. Awesome. All right. Anyone else have any comments, budget staff, anything I forgot? Anything we forgot that we thought of? We'll send out emails to you. Go ahead.
Oh, can I ask just a quick question? And sorry, I missed a little bit of it when I think you were reiterating the need to do it, Christine. And when Joe, you were talking about the SOS forms and the need to name, was it name each form in PB to match the SOS form?
Right, yeah. So having those forms, and lots of times it'll be, I know like county admin, your example is you have a few department IDs that they combined into one SOS form, right? Like the governance, I think it is.
Yeah, there's like 10 different, yeah.
Yeah, or like I know there's a SOS form for budget and planning, so we would, yeah, it just helps if we have the same name in both places. So you can talk with your analyst too. Jill's your analyst if you have questions on that. Yeah, just helps her verify the form.
Okay.
That is, yeah, you did hear it right. It's the PB form name that we're talking about, matching the SOS form name. Yes.
And we're not going back to the evil days of where we had to do separate levels on the SOS forms.
We're not.
Yay.
Yeah. These newer people don't understand how nice we are with that. No, that wasn't just our doing. Unfortunately, back when we had budget reductions, we had to have things by level, and for very difficult conversations when we didn't have enough money to go around. So, but now really we just want to know, what service are you providing for that amount of money, you know, in areas like patrol or prosecution, or just describe that service. The SOS forms, you know, just as a slight overview, maybe for those that are not familiar with them too, really are supposed to be geared towards what is being purchased with general fund. You know, general fund is our most discretionary general source of money. The board can decide to spend it wherever they want to. You know, of course, the county has mandates that we have to. That's our only money that we have available to spend in that area. So really it was geared more towards what are we purchasing with general fund? And so that's how those should be described, is what is the service being purchased for that amount of money in that budget year, if that makes sense. And some of you won't know the joy of SOS forms because you won't have to do them because you don't have general fund yet. Any other questions? All right, we're so hopeful for a smooth budget year. We're here for you with anything that you need, so let us know. Please take advantage of the budget drop-in sessions, especially those of you that are new. And like I said, we don't have a step-by-step manual for you, but especially those smaller departments where maybe you don't have budget staff to give you, you know, some, you know, lots of the bigger departments, they've got somebody there who can tell them, okay, this is the process we follow. But those of you that are newer, I know it's a little daunting. So we're here to help you, and we will make it through. Looks like virtually, probably for some of this, but just email us, call us, whatever, text us, whatever. All right, well, we're going to give you back some time. We didn't take all 2 hours. So watch our Inside Lane page. PB will be open later today. You'll be getting more emails from us, and we'll talk with you all soon. Good luck. Happy budgeting. Thank you.